Welcome, everybody, to the Power of New podcast. We are your hosts, Mark and Julie Appleyard, founders of Anothen Global Ministries here in beautiful Charlotte, North Carolina.
Today, we're inviting you to join us in a new conversation around discipling nations through spiritual leadership principles that work at work. This interactive podcast will take you further and dive you deeper into exploring our Heavenly Father's always perfect love as together we engage with real impact stories from Kingdom Marketplace leaders across the world.
And the Power of New podcast relies on the support of its listeners like you, so you can help us continue delivering this great content by donating through the provided link. If you're a US resident or US-based business looking to donate, of course, your donation is always tax deductible.
Today's guest and friend of Anothen resides in Cedar, Michigan, with his wife Kasey and 1-year-old son Gideon, literally 1 year old tomorrow, I believe, where he manages a family business in the agriculture industry. He was first elected to the local Township Board as a trustee in 2016, where he currently serves along with multiple other committees in the county. He's an active member in the community and volunteers in multiple ways throughout Leelanau County and the state of Michigan. Steve Yoder, welcome to the Power of New.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here and excited to see where our conversations take us and what God does.
Oh, yeah. We're always excited for that.
And now I was trying to work out, how long have we known each other? It has been a while.
It has been. Wow. I would say it's been, close to 6, 7, maybe 8 years, maybe even. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah, it would be, and we've had the honor of being up there with you guys quite a few times over those years as well. We've raised a bit of holy mischief together.
That's right. You know exactly where my life is at and what I'm doing, and it gives you a good perspective. So,
tell us a little bit about that. A little bit about your family, your background, all of that as well, so people know who we get the honor of talking with today.
Yeah, no, it's an honor. We've lived in the area here for about 10 years, lifelong resident of Michigan, and just in a family of 8 kids. We had my parents adopted 2 from Africa, so we've had the experience of that. My dad pastors a local church in the area here, and just, been excited with the family. He started his own business about 28 years ago, so that tells you I grew up in that, and when I became of age, I took on a managerial position and just been doing that. He's grown it from beginning the business at the corner of his barn to making it an industry that supplies a lot of fruit and vegetable growers in the state of Michigan with the product they need to store their fruits and vegetables. So it's a unique industry. So excited. Obviously very involved with church that my dad pastors in. State politics I've been very heavily involved with. And then the community as well. And just it's exciting just the influence you can do as one individual throughout the entire state, the impact you can have. And especially if you have your focus set on God, and just keep him the center of that and just let the distractions go away and just stay focused. It's amazing the impact you can have. It's pretty amazing.
Now, when I think of you, Steve, there's one word that particularly comes to mind, and that is the word community. Because when I think of every layer of the life that so we've had the honor of being able to partner with and get to know you in community at its most granular form, right through to its far-reaching form. But when you say, you know, we're in Michigan and we've got a business, people need to understand something. It's that you guys live in a house, and it's not just like you went and bought a house. But tell us a little bit about how this house came about. I remember the
your
first
parents'
time
house, not your current house.
Right. I remember the first time I turned up and I heard the story and saw the photos, and I thought, my word, that's a great story.
Because like you said, it community at a granular level. Your whole family is its own community,
right?
In a nutshell, and then the ripple effects sort of flow out from there. So
tell us a bit about that story.
Yeah, so it's like you said, Julie, my family is a very community-minded family. You know, we do, my dad, when he was growing up, he was a foreman of construction company. So he knew the trade of building houses. my mom has the unique talent of architect. Like she can look at something and just has a vision and just it explodes in her eyes, and on paper it just explodes and it just develops into something. And so we lived about an hour south of where we currently do, and the house and the business were just too close together, and it was just creating just when you have a business that's very active with equipment, large trucks, and a young family like that, it just creates a little bit of a conflict with all that commotion, safety, and stuff like that. So they started praying into just like, where are you taking us? We kind of lived away, an hour from any big city, church family, grocery shopping, church, and all that stuff. And so God just led him about an hour north. And there was a piece of land here that loggers had purchased, vacant, no house, no structure, nothing on it, just a driveway that was literally made for, logging trucks to go back and forth out and out. And my mom came, they looked at it and came home and said, guys, we got to take you up to look at this property. Like, this is just, there's something about it. And so, okay, so we took a day and we just drove up here and we walked the property and we just fell in love with it. Just the hilly nature of it. Just the scenic beauty of it was just very enthused. But as kids, you looked at this and go, this is hopeless. Like, how do you get a driveway through here? How do you get a house? Like, you're starting from scratch,
There's a lot of trees on that property.
And so obviously the grade, there was about a 20% grade up to the top of the hill where my mom had a vision of building the house. So she brought in some other people like, am I crazy? Like, this isn't the vision I have. Am I crazy with doing this? And they said, no, you're not. This is actually very doable. So then it all started, the first was purchasing it. And they purchased it for very cheap, now it's worth well over $1 million, the property, but they bought it like at less than 200,000.
Right.
Just exploded in that sense. But yeah, then it started doing the driveway. And I remember this one thing, and as kids, and we were all there looking at the property. My mom looked at that tree and said, I want that tree to be on our back deck right there. And it still is today. That tree is exactly where she had envisioned it. So we built, from scratch. The family dug in. We built the entire thing ourselves. Obviously we had the excavators come in and do their thing, but as far as the framing, construction part of it, our family just built the entire thing, 6,000 square foot house. They live right now. It's just, the view is just the privacy, the peacefulness back there is just phenomenal. Just the vision, that, obviously the talent that my dad had, and then the vision that my mom had, how they made those two mesh together, and just how God used that and really just blessed them dramatically. It's just a wonderful testimony.
And what a great part of your family's story as well. So tell us a little bit about what community means to you as you think about even perhaps that experience you all walk through together. You had a collective story as a family, and again, I mean, families are families. They've all got their issues and things in the midst of them. And but what's one of the things about community that you learn from your family through that experience, and even as the years have moved on?
I'm going to give a little bit of a story how I even got involved in community, because every one of us, like, unless you're actively involved in your community, you have no idea what's going on, because it's just not the news coverage is not there. And just unless you volunteer and do all this time and effort, all you watch is the news, and it's either state or national. You don't really pay attention to what's involved. And I remember back when I turned 18, I got to know some neighbors, and they got me involved in some things. And I told them one day, I said, look, I don't even know when the meetings are at locally. Like, I have no idea, all I know is national and state. Like, I want to know what's going on in my community. And they said, that's a good point. We need to start pushing that a little bit more. And so from there on, I started attending my local municipality meetings and just started going through that. And when there was a volunteer opportunity, I started volunteering there. And the connections you build, in a community like this, that's a very high tourist community. You start volunteering, you get people coming in from all over the country, that are just coming there, the connections you build, and just the stories you hear. But not just that, the trust you build in the community. And that's vital, because you see, being involved in the community now for 15 plus years, just volunteering and all that stuff. People come and go, you know, but it means a lot when somebody is always there when they say they are, and they mean what they say. And I think that's very much lacking today. And that's something that I very much credit to just my family values and just what my parents taught me and what family taught us about caring for each other. And I think that's a lot of when you look at a community, that you value your community and you put into it what you can, because yes, state's huge and a nation's large, you know, but a community is where it starts. And that's where you can make a huge impact. And from there, it will make an even larger impact. And that's just something that I've held on to for years now. It's just, if I can do it in my community, I can do it in my state, and I can do it in my nation. But it starts in the family and then to the community and go on from there. And that's just, if you can conquer that, have a solid family where you're connected with each other and just, you know, help each other out, you can take that to the community, that same philosophy, and changes the world.
Yeah,
man, I love it.
It does. It's
well said.
It's discipling nations at its most granular level. You can't disciple a nation after the heart of God if you can't do that in your family.
Right.
Because, you know, we have friends, Randy and Leslie, who basically say whoever wins the family wins the culture in the end. And that's pretty much what you're describing right there, what you're living out day to day.
Right. Well, and it's just, you know, and I think what we so often, you know, because you look at people that are successful, you know, globally and all that kind of stuff, and they may not have any type of Christianity in their life, but they use godly principles. And I think it becomes even more powerful is when Christianity in our life plus godly principles, the impact that we can have. And that's something that, you know, having in a family and taking that into a community, godly principles plus your belief in God, the impact that you can have on people. I could tell you countless stories of me being in a meeting, you know, not saying one word, and they'd be in their meeting and a swear word would come out and they go, I'm so sorry. I'm like, I never said anything, you know, but it's what you carry. It's what you carry that leaves an impact through that, and just the respect that you create based on that. When you don't even have to say a word, but it's how you carry that impact with you that leaves an impact on a lot of others. And sometimes you don't have to say a word.
That's
so
true.
Good, Steve. If you're just joining us, we're with Steve and Yoder from Cedar, Michigan. If you don't know where Cedar, Michigan is, it's just down the road from Traverse City, which will be an area that many of you are familiar with, better known as the cherry capital of the world and the home of Mooma's ice cream. Okay, so if you know anything about anything, you'll know that that's the home of America's greatest favorite scoop.
Yeah, something like that.
It is amazing. But above and beyond that, a man of God that we've just grown to love and value and treasure as a dear friend. Along these many years we've run together, and so we're just unpacking this whole thing about the nature of a community, particularly discipleship, all of those sorts of things. And I'm just loving the whole concept of how you talk about community, Steve. And you talk about it as having impact, as really, if I could put it this way, like a culture that you carry that starts in the home. A question around this is, and again, knowing a little bit of your story with regards to being in local politics and the like, and entering in really at a time within our nation's narrative of extreme divisiveness, and it's by nature of the way the nation's been formed. It always is going to be a nation that has division, because it's there because you got freedom of speech, so you're going to have division. That's by nature of it. People with different opinions is actually considered a value around here. But as the years have gone on, it really has become an extremely polarized environment politically and the like. I'm interested to know, it's clear that not everybody thinks how you do, not everybody believes how you believe, and yet you navigate these waters without compromising who you are and what you stand for. And yet you used a very key word there that I think is noticeable by its absence in our society today, and that's the word trust. You used before. It's important to build trust.
Yeah.
how have you established trust, and what does trust look like to you when you're in an environment with people who are very, very different to you?
I think a lot of that trust, and that's a really good question, because that's something that has even just developed in me over the last, I'd say, 5, 6, 7 years. Just this concept of trust. And I remember there was about 5 years ago, I had to make a major decision in my life, whether what I do in the state, and it was a big position to run for. That was going to create a lot of backlash. Um, but I felt like I had to do it because I saw the opportunity that I can provide to bring unity to people, and just bring a different mindset in working with people in that sense. And I remember talking with my congressman at the time, and I remember just having a brief conversation with him over the phone. And I said, hey, what I'm telling you, I just hope you can keep this to yourself. And he said something to me that just stuck with me, that I've carried with me. He said, Steve, I wouldn't be at where I'm at today if I didn't have a loose cannon. Loose lips sink ships is in that concept. And he said, I wouldn't be where I would be at today if I didn't keep secrets. I have to gain the trust of people if I want to be successful. And that's something that's just, that hit me. It was like, wow, if I'm going to go out and have an impact in a community, I have to be trusted. And how do I become trusted? By earning the trust from people when they share information that I can use that, not against them, not any way, but use it to build them up and gain that trust and help them along the way. And that's something that I've just, whenever I go into a meeting, if it's something that's, you just have a concept of when you go into something, conversations are had, that you're just careful about when you go into a public setting, saying certain things to hurt other people, or just, how can I build that person up rather than tear them down based on what they said. And that's just the concept, every day that I try to go into my community, where I gain the respect of people, because no, I may disagree with you 99%, but the 1% is what I'm going to focus on and build you up on, because that's something that I can see in you. And that's just where I'm going to focus on, building that trust with you. And it's just amazing the impact that you can have even in your community. I've had so many people just, just this year I decided to run for another position that was very divisive, and just, that I saw that needed change. And I've had people from all sides of the spectrum, political spectrum, come up to me and say, no, Steve, you've got my vote. Just based on how you carry yourself. And these are people that I would hardly ever agree with politically, but just the respect they have for that, because I listen to them and I respect them in their belief, and not demean or demonize them in any way, because there is a way to do that, to earn that respect, and not demonize people and how they believe or what they believe, but just love them.
Yeah.
What you're describing is recognizing that every person that you interact with carries the image of God, and you're going to treat them accordingly. There's no way you would, if God was standing in front of you, you would not treat him badly. not if you wanted to live. It's just what you're describing is recognizing the image of God in the people that you work with, even those that are very different.
Yeah. I think with that as well is because of that, there's the temptation, and this is something for all of us, it's a temptation when we're in any type of leadership. The temptation is to weaponize our words when we get jabbed at or poked at. And when we're armed with information, it's very easy to weaponize those words in order to, out of, insecurity, survival instinct, whatever it may be, in order to try and get your way out and get your way through it. And I think you highlight such a key point, that the actual, one of the foundation stones of the architecture of trust, if we're going to build this architecture of trust that's a bridge for people to walk across backwards and forwards that they can stand on. It's not giving in to that temptation and going, no, I make a choice ahead of time to use that information in the sparing and an appropriate way that builds up, not tears down. And that takes a lot of self-leadership to do that, because I don't doubt for a second the temptation has been very real for you at times to go, I Yoder, bless you in Jesus' name.
No, it's very true, and it's so true. Even what Julie said, there was years ago when I listened to a teaching that was just on the image of God, and it's something that I've just even been walking through myself. Is just the image of God is what God created me, but it's how you look at other people, because somebody can one day just flip out and just be completely opposite of what you thought they were, and you have to look at that person and go, no, that was actually not you. That was not you, because that's something that you're giving into, and I want to love you in it. That's just, it's something that I'm not saying I'm perfect in it, because I'm certainly not, because I do struggle with it, even, because in the community that you're at, you get jabbed in the back a lot of times. And it's in that moment, what do you do about it?
Right.
And it's just in that moment you learn, you know what? Just going to keep my mouth shut and move on, because that'll have the biggest impact. It's not not going to help if I get a bullhorn out now and explode and tell the whole world what just happened. Utilizing what just happened, taking it as a learning curve and an experience, to use that and just move on from that. And just, I learned a lesson there, and I'm going to move on from that. I just love people in that regardless, and not, you don't have to go and spite people or cut people off based on what they've done to you. Yes, you have to take precautions and protect yourself and your family, of course. But there's a common sense level of approach to this. That if you can just learn to love people, regardless of what they do, just still love them, because it's not them. It's not them. They just, sometimes people have demons that they're fighting themselves, just like I do, and just learn and love people through that.
Right. If you're writing anything down today here at the Power of New, maybe this one. What does love look like? Some days it looks like keeping your mouth shut and moving on. That's what it looks like. And I think there might be a few of us that need to hear that, Steve. not looking at anyone in a mirror at all right about now.
That's right.
But it is. It's a valuable leadership principle, and it's discernment. Okay, why am I feeling the need to speak truth right now? Is it to weaponize words to tear down, or actually am I speaking it to build up? And if I can't speak it to build up, shut my mouth and move on. That might be a pretty good litmus test.
Well, and just to add to that, one principle that I always try to carry with myself, don't ever give advice when you're not asked for it. Because then you will never be regretting what you said. If they ask you for advice, they're going to want to hear, and just their heart's going to be open to it. But if you try to jam some advice down to somebody that's just not asking for it, you're just asking for trouble. And that's something that I've always just tried to carry myself with. I'm not going to try to insert my opinion or give advice when I'm in a room full of individuals when I'm not being asked, because it's not going to go. The door is going to open where that opportunity is going to come, where I can do that. And it's just, if you carry that with you and just use that wherever you go, man, it's just the respect you even earn through that, and the trust based on that, because you're not just spewing out your opinion wherever you go. You admire people for this.
That's great wisdom.
Goodness. Yeah.
Right there. And this is, I think today what we're hearing is these are really practical lessons on restoring social discourse at the end of the day. And we're in a nation that is desperate for that underpinning factor that brings social cohesion, having it restored and replaced. And I just I love the practical and simple ways that you're articulating that statement. And it's not because you're reading it out of a book. This is what it's like being in the real world.
I've got a question for you regarding excuse me, I've got
I did get some water.
You did get water. It wasn't helping. The question is, how do you see, just with regards to Mark's comment around social discourse, because typically when people disagree, it seems that we don't know how to have a respectful disagreement with somebody. It seems on social media, it's just, I'm going to get up there, I'm going to say what I'm going to say. And how do you see Christians in your community? How do you see the impact that Christians have positively or negatively, around social discourse in the community. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah,
Because
that's a deep question and a good one. One thing, I guess, just something that I see it operate, and just kind of rubs me the wrong way, where I love to look at people with an open heart, and an open mind, in that sense. But I think in today's Christianity, if I may call it that, in today's circle, the church and all that stuff, as believers, we tend to get hurt and offended really quick. And I think there needs to be more maturity on that level. Because I've had many opportunities, based on something that happened in the church or in the community or my neighbor, or a friend, to be offended or hurt church community and my local community, the political community, just whatever you want to call it. Words that are said, actions that are taken. How do I handle it? It's not always easy. It's not always easy in that sense. But I think the more that we can just, when there's a disagreement that comes up, and I've been in multiple instances where there has been disagreements. How do I handle that? Right. A lot of times I look for the part I can agree on and focus on that. And just not put the bullseye on the fact that we disagree on this front. Yes, there are things I majorly disagree with some individuals, but there's other areas where they are wonderful at, and I will work with them whatever I can. I remember there was one time there was a community effort being underway to change something at the county level, and I got involved with a group of individuals where I was literally the only individual in this group of about 10 people that all of these 10 others agreed everything, philosophically, politically, everything. And I was the only one that believed differently in a lot of that. But we found one issue, we worked together, and we got it changed in the county. Through that, it's just, I still get remarks today like, you were brave in the fact that you teamed up with us to get this one issue done. It's like, we're not going to change a world if we're too focused on only connecting with people we agree with.
That's true.
And that's the point where we're going to be able to become stronger. We're going to be able to become more powerful and a much larger impact if we can team up with people that we may not always agree with, but find the area you can agree with, and you can have a major impact on that life. And I'll bet you're going to earn a lot of trust. And when the time comes, those people will come to you and ask for help. In a lot of those instances, and there's still today, I get calls from people just like, hey, how do you feel about this? We disagree on everything, but I've earned that trust from them, just because I listened to them. We worked together and we got something accomplished, that left an impact for the betterment of the community, and it's looking at it through a different lens and focusing on a different, focusing on the smaller part that we can actually agree on, rather than the large disagreement there that's just going to tear us apart anyway. Don't focus on that.
Right. Yeah. And that kind of leads into, I guess, another question, which is then the practicality of how do you let go of some of those offenses? Because offense is one of those things that kind of, it sneaks up on us. We did a teaching a little while ago, and I think we've probably even done it with you guys. The pit of offense. When you step in the poo, you don't usually aim for it. If you're walking along the street and you see something that a dog's left behind on the sidewalk, you usually try and avoid it. But every now and then you step in something that you really didn't intend to step in, and it sticks with you, and the stench of it is just kind of, it overpowers everything. How do you practically, when you find yourself offended, how do you let go of it?
Good question. Something that I've used in my life, multiple times, and I've had to, there's been instances in my life that I've had to work through and pray through and just, talk through with my wife or my family and just figure out how to navigate through this. But one thing that I've always, just a simple thing that I can put a check on my life, if I'm offended or not based on something, is if the individual that I either got hurt or offended through with, the way I can check to see if I'm actually offended with them is if there's something great that happens in their life, can I cheer for them or won't I?
That's a
Is
great.
there something that just terrible that happened in their life and I'm just like, good for them? Or is it, do I feel remorseful for them?
Wow.
That's where the check in my spirit comes. If there's something that great that happens in my life and I find myself going, oh boy, okay, Steve, there's a problem here.
Right.
That's just a simple check that I think everybody can use in their life. And a practice that you can put in is how do you view that other person? It comes right back to the point of how do you view that person? Are you happy for the person when they succeed, or are you happy when they don't succeed? And that was a big thing that I just even had to work through myself here a couple of years ago with an individual that I realized, you know what, I'm carrying some offense here. I've got to let that go. I've got to let it go. And just to the point now where if I'd see that individual on the street, I would go up, greet them. I mean, be happy to see them. And it's amazing the impact that you can have on that when you go into the street and you see that person that hasn't let you go, but you go up there. Oh my word, it's miserable, but you feel great because it's just and that's just, you know, it releases yourself from any condemnation, any offense, and it just makes you feel free as a bird.
It's a great
To just go about and just live your life and just be happy for everybody, you know, where people are like, how can you do that? And it's like, because I let it go. I'm happy for them. It doesn't.
Freest man in the world at that point.
Yeah. It reminds me of the 1 Corinthians 13 that, you know, 4-7. Love keeps no record of wrongs. It rejoices when the truth wins out. It doesn't rejoice in people's hardship and you know, all of those things. It forgives all things. It endures all things. It's, you know, that's what living that out actually looks like, and it's a sacrifice to do that. It's not something that comes easy, and it is something that you have to put effort into. As with everything, you know, intimacy, there's no shortcuts to intimacy. There's no shortcuts to actually living free. You've got to employ some of these strategies and actually work at them in your life in order to see the fruit and the freedom of it.
What we've been doing quite a while around here, Steve, is we have business leaders who go into other businesses to pray for other businesses, and it's an interesting practice. It's a fun one. And we hear from God together, and all sorts of wonderful things happen. But there's one little piece that the Lord gave us some insight on a good while ago that we inject in, and it's this: is that, and you've been to more networking meetings than you've had hot breakfast probably over your years, but in network meetings, it's always, you know, put a business card in the basket and they'll win a door prize, or, you know, whatever it might be. Well, what we do in these times is we say, put a business card in the basket. When you leave, withdraw a business card that's not your own, and you make a commitment to pray for that business every day. And what that does is it smashes this competitiveness or offenses or disagreement. It gets rid of it, because if the Holy Spirit got you to pull out a card and you go, oh my gosh, that's Bill Jones, and Bill and I, boy, and now I've got a commitment to pray for Bill. It's just a really practical tool to do this, because I know myself, just to your point, which is really well said in the practicalities, is, again, in our role, we have a very public profile as well, and we have all manner of people and things that will present themselves from time to time, which provide ample opportunity to
be offended
for myself to justify that I can pick up offense on. And one of the surefire ways to let it go is when I'm driving past that place of work, that church, that house, that whatever it is, where I know those people or that person, that street resides, is to go, Lord, I just want to pray a blessing over their household or their business or their church or their whatever now. I pray right now to the north, south, east, and west that the favor of God would sweep through the work of their hands, that a deeper revelation of your love would be manifest. And it's really hard to hold offense when you actually
you're praying for someone like that. Yeah, that's
true. It's just like, man, you can just feel a tide of your spirit come up where you just wish they're good. You wish no harm. And there's something about that yeah, just to that exact point, is incredibly practical and freeing. You're the freest person in the world when you're driving down the road with that prayer springing forth from your lips.
Yep. No, 100%. And that's just, when you learn to just let it go, where you actually can, because it's another thing. If you find yourself having a hard time just even praying for that individual, praying for that business, there's very likely some offense there, and that's a great check in your spirit. Okay, well, I got to work on that.
I got to work.
So there's multiple ways to just look at this, and just practical ways to look at it, and very easy ways, that are just everyday instances, that's, I think every honest person would realize, you know what, I have offense there. It's an easy check to do on yourself.
It's great.
Figure out where I'm lacking in that, because we're just not going to succeed in life being offended. It's just not going to happen. And the quicker you can let that go, the better you can be.
That's true. And I think that you're highlighting something else as well, Steve, is there's a decent amount of humility that you need to carry in order to be that honest and that open with yourself. I think, honesty and integrity is not just something that is given away to other people. It's directed towards yourself, which also then builds the humility that's needed in order to go, I'm actually carrying offense here and I need to do something about it. So
I'm reminded of Philippians 2, where it's Christ, he humbled himself, became obedient to death, even death on a cross. Therefore God exalted him, gives him the name above every name. That the humility of our King that was manifest in the way he lived his life. And then we look at when he is, I'm sure it's the Sermon on the Mount, bless those who persecute you, bless and do not curse. And we talk about, well, how do you do that? Well, this tie into humility. But what does it mean to actually steward favor, to steward authority in a community? Well, we can't do it unless we're following the pathway of our Savior, of our King. What was the pathway he trod?
Yeah,
was this
was the
pathway of humility. He trotted all the way to the cross. That's where his humility, led him toward, and yet he blessed in the in his actions, in his words, always there. When he spoke truth to those who should have known better, and spoke it directly. To overturn tables,
right?
Again, I mean, it's not like it was all meek and mild, but it was.
Yeah, I've got a. Just on that meekness, somebody gave us a really good example, working example of what meekness was. Somebody who is meekness is having a sword, knowing how to use it, but keeping it in its sheath. I know how to draw my sword against you, but I will not.
Yeah. Amen.
It's not a weakness. Meekness has always been kind of like, just not actually having any kind of strength or courage to do anything, just kind of stepping back and being a doormat and being in the shadows. But meekness is not that.
That's great.
But I think, again, that's something that, Steve, you display when you can say, I'm not going to focus on what I disagree on. I'm going to focus on what we do agree on, and I'm going to work towards making that, having that make a difference. And I think that's, humility, meekness. This guy's a walking example of Jesus. His community's lucky to have him.
He is indeed. Vote one, Steve Yoder.
I don't know about that, because it's something that, in life I've never really, I'll be honest here, I've never really focused on being humble. It's just not something that I've it's been something that I've, really focused on. But it's amazing when you go out into the community, just the things people say, man, you're a humble man. It's like, where does that come from? But I think it's all about just caring for people. In that sense, and that just it carries that in that sense, because I think that's something that if we just do that, you don't have to worry about God make me humble and all this kind of stuff. What you're called to do, and just love people in that sense.
Come on.
That just comes with it.
So good. It's a byproduct.
It's a byproduct. It's a fruit. It's a side effect of all the other things that you carry.
Now, Steve, you have a very unique perspective. We talked about this before we went live today, and this is again just knowing quite a bit of your story, that you've got this perspective on family that was rooted in heritage of community manifest in family. You also are a leader in your own family business as well. You've worked in that, and you're a leader of men in a very real, very manly work environment as well. And then you're also a civic leader and a volunteer in your broader community. I'm interested in a working definition, and there's no right or wrong here. It's just more interested in your perspective on a working definition of this. What does discipling nations, how would you define discipling nations? Not what is it, how would you define discipling nations? From the perspective, you've got this rounded view that not many have, that may claim they do, but we know you. We know that you live in these spaces and that you're a very vibrant and active and contributing member of each of those different types of community, expressions of community, family, business, civic. How would you define discipling nations from the perspective you hold?
Good question.
Sorry, maybe a church community. That was the fourth one. I'm sorry, because I want to make sure that's in there too, because you're an active participant in your local church community as well.
Oh, right. Yeah, I think a lot of times discipling, we make it into such, how can we have the biggest impact and all that kind of stuff. When I think a lot of times as individuals, we need to bring it back to the local community and how can we do it here? Because I think once we've conquered how to do it in our family, how to do it in our church community, how to do it, in the greater community as a whole, it's going to start exploding beyond that. And I think a lot of times, even in my, managing a family business, it's just honoring people for the role that they have. And just, or even the community that you're in, honoring people for the role that they have, whether they're a volunteer, whether they're a paid, individual, with a specific position. You don't give higher respect just based on the position that somebody holds, because that everybody at one point started from one point. And it's important that the guy that cleans the kitchen or the guy that does the accounting, that they're both honored in the same way. Yes, they may have different responsibilities, where one, might have a little bit more stress on his life than the other type of thing, but every individual, they have the same heart. God loves them just as much. How can I love them in that way and treat everybody with the same type of respect, regardless of the position they hold? And that's, once you start doing that to individuals, it just kind of carries over, or it just starts impacting people, on and on down the generations and into the family line, where it starts crossing county lines, state lines, and country lines, where you just start practicing in that and just focusing on the individual in that sense. And I think a lot of times, we talk about, impacting nations, but I think you won't be able to do it until, like I said earlier, you start impacting your local community. Because that's where a lot of the training happens. But you just immediately dive into the nations. Like, I'm sure everybody here, a lot of us would screw up and we lose it. And I think that's where, where a lot of the community focus comes into play. Or, if you look at it as I'm training here and not look at it as something less, but I'm being trained here to go, beyond that. Because there's a lot of times people have challenged me or asked me like, hey, you need to do this and do that. And it's like, no, I don't, for instance, there was this year I had two different options that I could have done. One that was a state level position, or there was a county level position. And I said, no, I don't want the state level position. I want the county, because that's the impact that I can have, that I can see, that I can have immediate. And just that I can still be with my family and not be ripped away from my family. And that's where I think a lot of times too many people, we jump too fast. And we, instead of focusing on the small, the community here, and grow through that, instead of taking a jump over something, let God do that for you. He'll promote you in the right time, right place, when that needs to happen. But in the meantime, focus on your community, on your family, and learning the skills at the local level there, and God will promote you at the right time.
Well, what I'm hearing there, Joe, is this language about, we've been using it a lot, about human flourishing. Human flourishing is environmental. It is also about creating these relationships, these interconnected relationships where again, people feel they're valued, feel like they belong. When a person feels like they belong, then they're less likely to leave that community and move to another one. They're more likely to want to stick around and actually express the peace that they carry for their community.
And fight for it.
Exactly right. And fight for it. And what do we end up then when we got talent retention in a community? Well, a society can flourish in that space. Well, if that is not a representation of the image of God and discipling a nation one person at a time, I don't know what is. By just going, hey, I don't care if you're the janitor, you're the accountant, or you're the leader of the organization, you're all treated with the same amount of respect, the same amount of honor. That we actually come with it with thankfulness on our lips to thank you for what you've done, and we really value your part today. We couldn't be doing it unless we're together, or those sorts of things. It's just, I mean, it seems in a world that is so darned complex, and the targets of what society stands for, it moves, and all the virtue signaling and all the stuff that's going on these days, we lose sight that it's actually very simple. We've over-engineered this thing so much. In actual fact, social cohesion begins with, now I'm not minimizing that there aren't and saying there aren't complexities. Of course there are, and social issues and the like, but the foundation stones are very simple. Even a bloke like me can understand it. They're that simple. And these are the pieces about that people feeling like they belong through recognition and
We're getting close to time here.
We are,
it's nearly time to be asking some fresh testimony questions and all that kind of stuff. But I'm feeling like we need to talk with you more, Mr. Yoder, because you've got some very solid and easily transferable ideas and the word's just gone out of my head, but principles that you've walked out, that you've proven that are really, really helpful. And I'm kind of like, oh gosh, it's already time, and I still have so many more questions. So
yes, we knew we'd never be short on things.
We were never gonna run out of things to talk about. So
but fresh testimony.
So fresh testimony. What is a fresh testimony? That's, Mark's coined this phrase, fresh testimony, and everybody's talking about it, and I can't say it if I'm not concentrating because I get my tongue tied around it. But what is something fresh that God is doing right now in your life?
Good question. I think one, and I'm going to take you to a scripture verse that's just really been hitting me, I guess, the last, a couple months, that I've really been focused on it. And I actually taught this at church, brought this all in, that I feel like God's just kind of like working on me on, and that's Ephesians 2:10. And everybody's familiar with this verse, where it says, for we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, which God hath before ordained that we should walk in them. And I guess there's a this YouTube video that's been going around, and it's quite a few years old, but it's called Chiseling, God's Chiseling. And I just encourage anybody, just look that up, look at that. It's about 11-minute video, short little video clip, where it's just the skit guys are, playing out what God does to you and chiseling things out of you. And just, I guess what got revealed to me is, like, even in the Beatitudes, you go through that whole step. Jesus laid out to us what we need to do to live out our life to be successful, all the way down to being a peacemaker. One thing that's very, I think that has stood out to me a lot, it doesn't say peacekeeper, it says peacemaker. Because if you're a peacekeeper, you have to compromise. And God didn't call us to compromise. And so that's just, if we and sharing that at church, just the eyes that got opened up, just, and even in me, it was like, wow, I don't, we hear about all this stuff about compromising that and compromising that. No, I'm not going to compromise my values. I'm not going to compromise my principles. because that's something that God instilled in me.
Mm.
And that's something that that I'm going to continue putting into practice. And when you condense all of that, how it's making you into the image that God created you to be. And that's just something that, just I've been chewing on and on and just challenging people on, just whether I send them the video clip, like, hey, where does this take you this week? Type of stuff, and just it's amazing that people are like, hey, I got to see that. And it's the first thing you talk about when you see him next time, just like, wow, it's like, man, this guy, I got a lot to learn, watching that. So, but yeah, it's something that I feel like that God's just been working at in me, just, creating me into be a more of into his image and into what he needs that to be. And am I allowing him to just chisel things out of my life that are not meant to be there?
Yeah.
So good. It takes me straight to the great commandment.
Yeah.
Because again, we're talking about respecting the image of God in someone else. So love your neighbor as you love yourself. If you're not willing to allow God to work on the image inside of you, then how can you possibly respect the image in someone else? If you can't respect the image in you enough to allow him to work on it, to refine it, then we'll never be able to respect that in those around us. And I just think that's it's such a powerful word that you share right there. That chiseling is as much going to we know we're allowing him to chisel us when we have the capacity to draw out the identity in those around us.
Right.
Again, a good measuring stick of, are we allowing it to happen here? If we're not allowing it to happen out there, it says we're not allowing it to happen here. I would imagine at that point we fall into pride, judgment, unforgiveness. Because I don't need that fixed in my life. It's just that's a really that word goes deep. We could spend a whole hour at least
on that,
chasing that one
just
around
by itself.
That's a great insight.
That is good.
That's you're not here to be a peacekeeper, but a peacemaker. Let that one sit on you for the rest of the day.
That is going to sit on me for the rest of the day.
Now, Steve, we've asked a lot of questions here this morning, and everybody's sitting on the edge of their seats. For we're going to ask the most important question of all, and that is this: what was the last thing you purchased online, and what was it for?
Well, I actually had to purchase a little hard drive, 1 terabyte hard drive for the computer at church, just so if it ever crashes. We had a couple weeks ago, everything crashed, and thankfully it was able to save, not losing everything. So I had to actually purchase a hard drive that connects to the computer that I can store information on there. So if it ever crashes, I can just plug it in and download it again. So
very good.
Very wise, solid purchase.
It was indeed, because it may sound like a small thing, but anyone in technology and in church culture and life knows that, my word, that is catastrophic when that happens. Oh dear. Yeah, anything technically based, if it can go wrong, and the law of averages suggests at some point. We were on because last week we were at Heaven in Business down in Atlanta, and we didn't have our broadcast. The week before we had Nadia Dixon on, and amazing conversation. If you haven't seen that, go back, take a look. An incredible woman of God. And a very, very dear friend. What most people don't know is just before we'd just gone live, you know how we do the countdown and bang, suddenly we're ready to go. All of a sudden, my computer goes black, literally just black. There's nothing. It's just like someone had got the battery and literally just pulled it out. It was just black. And I've got an electrical background, so immediately it's like, my power's shut off. But then
the lights are all
lights
on.
Are still on. I'm going, oh my gosh, maybe the circuit's blown, but no, I've got other things that are plugged into the. No, hang on a second, what could it be?
What is it?
And what I discovered is when I'd moved to come and sit in here in this seat, the little power lead that's a USB type power lead plugs into a USB charger behind the curtain here, and I just kicked it with my toe and popped it out. and
the computer went flat.
Literally, the battery just mustn't have had enough life in it to keep it going, and it literally just died. Oh my word! We are just about to go. Welcome everybody to the power of new. And that is
like 20 seconds to go or something, and it's like, oh no!
And we have some pretty fancy technology around here, but none of it, it can't stand up if it doesn't have power. So,
right,
getting a hard drive is a very smart.
That's a very smart move.
Yep.
Very good idea.
I realized how valuable that is once, 2 weeks you go without a computer at church because it's in the shop. It's like, wow.
There you go. No, see, 2 weeks ago there were some gremlins in all the systems. I think.
That's right. Electronic gremlins getting around. But boy, we've covered some territory here today. We've been talking a lot about community. And one of the things Steve said very early on, if you're just catching the end, go back and take a look at the start. This whole nature of trust, and it's a key word, as a civic leader, a business leader, a leader in his own household and family, a leader in his church. Steve carries a very unique perspective around this. And we've talked a lot about social discourse and how does that get restored. And we haven't been theorizing because Steve's been speaking out of the experience that he's walked out, the revelation that God's shown him. And it's one thing to be shown a revelation, it's another thing to act upon it. And so in many ways, the conversation's been around proof of concept. As, I've tried this out, maybe I got this right, and oh my gosh, here I go. But what's happened? We're building trust. And we're in a world right now that is craving healthy social discourse, where people aren't demonized or dehumanized in the process to develop social cohesion in societies where people can flourish, where the image of God can be fully revealed. And boy, what a great conversation it has been as we have gone after those themes and chased a rabbit or two around at the same time. But just lots of great conversations. Steve, it's such a joy to have you here, my friend. And thank you for joining us here today.
It's an honor to spend a Sunday morning with you guys. And it's been exciting and just lots of laughs and lots of things to learn.
And you've got a birthday party to attend, I hear, not long after this. Is that correct?
That's right. Got a birthday party for my 1-year-old son, turning 1 tomorrow. So we got family coming to town and doing that this afternoon, eating his first cake. So.
Oh yeah, congratulations! You've managed to keep him alive for a whole year.
I know.
No small feat. I think the party, the 1-year-old birthday party, is a celebration for the parents. Totally for the parents.
It's a celebration of human endurance.
You think you know a lot, but just stay around for a year with a 1-year-old. You learn a lot.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
I think I did not realize just how selfish I was till I went through that first year with a 1-year-old. Oh my goodness, their stories for another day. We're not going to share everything here on the Power of News. Some things have been left unsaid, I think. But hey, if you've been listening to us here at the Power of New, you've had the joy as we've had and the honor of having a conversation with dear friend and brother Stephen Yoder from Traverse City, Cedar, Michigan, near Traverse City, Michigan. And we've been in relationship for a good long time, and what a joy it is just to see what the Lord's doing in the life of this man of God. If you only just caught the end, get back, take a look at the start. Lots of great stuff for you to get a pen and paper ready to jot down. Really practical takeaways today. But of course, the Power of New podcast relies on the support of its listeners like you. So you can help us continue delivering this content by donating through the provided link. If you're a US resident or US-based business looking to donate, of course, your donation is always tax deductible. And remember that God wants to take you further and deeper into encounters with his always perfect love for greater impact, because he wants to love the world through you. God bless you guys. Steve, you stick around right here. We've got Jonathan and Amanda are going to be jumping on with Dr. Dale and Jan as well. We're going to pray for you and bless you on your way as well. So stick around. But everybody else, we look forward to seeing you again next week here at the